They say in sickness and in health. But for Adrian Vance, those were just words on a contract he was ready to shred. While his wife, Eleanor, lay shivering on the floor, coughing until her vision blurred, Adrian wasn't calling an ambulance. He was silencing his phone to listen to the laughter of another woman. He thought Elena was a burden, a fading flower in his perfect garden. He thought he could discard her and replace her with someone younger, brighter, and healthier. But Adrian Vance forgot one thing. A woman who survives the fires of hell comes back not as ash, but as a diamond. And by the time he realized his mistake, she wasn't just surviving. She was standing next to the one man Adrian feared the most. The grand clock in the hallway of the Vance estate ticked loudly, each second echoing like a hammer against a nail. It was 11:45 p.m. Elena Vance sat at the head of a mahogany dining table that stretched out long enough to seat 20 people. Tonight, it was set for two. 2 crystal wine glasses, 2 bone china plates rimmed with gold, and a centerpiece of white lilies, Adrian's favorite, though he likely wouldn't remember that. The food, a slow-roasted duck prepared by their private chef hours ago, was now cold and congealed under the silver serving dome. Elena shivered, pulling her cashmere shawl tighter around her thin shoulders. The central heating was set to 75 degrees, yet the cold seemed to radiate from her bones outward. Elena looked up. It was Mrs. Higgins, their housekeeper for the last 5 years. The older woman's face was pinched with worry. "Mr. Vance, he hasn't called?" Elena offered a weak, pale smile. "He's busy, Mrs. Higgins. The merger with Oakhaven Tech is in its final stages. He loses track of time." "It is your 5th anniversary, Mrs. Vance," Mrs. Higgins said softly, stepping closer to pour warm tea into Eleanor's empty wine glass. Even a busy man has a calendar. Eleanor didn't reply. She couldn't defend him anymore, not when the evidence was carved into the hollows of her cheeks. 6 months ago, Elena had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder affecting her blood platelets. It drained her energy, left her bruised at the slightest touch, and required aggressive, exhausting treatments. Before the sickness, she had been Adrian's partner in every sense. They had built Vance Global together. She was the one who charmed the investors, who proofread the contracts, who smoothed over Adrian's jagged edges. But as her health declined, so did his affection. He didn't look at her with love anymore. He looked at her like she was a broken appliance he couldn't figure out how to return. The sound of the heavy oak front door unlocking shattered the silence. Elena straightened her spine, wincing at the ache in her joints. "He's here." Adrian Vance walked into the dining room. He was a striking man, tall, with hair the color of midnight and eyes like cold steel. He was wearing a bespoke Italian suit that cost more than most people's cars. He didn't look tired. He looked exhilarated, and he smelled, distinctly, of vanilla and expensive gin. He stopped, loosening his tie, and looked at the table. He didn't look at Elena. He looked at the cold food. "Why is the food still out?" Adrian asked, his voice devoid of warmth. "It smells stale." Elena stood up, using the table for support. "Happy anniversary, Adrian." Adrian paused, his hand halfway to unbuttoning his collar. He looked at her then, really looked at her. But there was no softness. His gaze swept over her pale skin, the dark circles under her eyes, the way her dress hung loosely on her frame. "Right," he said, checking his Rolex. "The 5th. I forgot." "I waited," Elena whispered. "I was working, Elena. Someone has to keep this empire running, since you decided to retire to the sickbed permanently." The cruelty of the remark was like a physical slap. "I didn't decide to get sick, Adrian. The doctors say if the treatment works, if If, Adrian snapped, walking to the sideboard to pour himself a scotch. I hear if every day. I come home to a hospital ward, Elena. It's depressing. Do you know how hard it is to close $1 billion deal and come home to this? He gestured vaguely at her, as if her existence was the inconvenience. I'm sorry my dying is inconveniencing your schedule, Elena said, a spark of her old fire igniting. Adrian slammed the glass down. Don't be dramatic. You aren't dying, you're just weak. You've let yourself go. Look at you. He pulled a velvet box from his pocket. For a second, Elena's heart skipped. He had remembered. He had bought a gift. He tossed it onto the table. It slid across the polished wood and stopped near the cold duck. Take it, he said. Happy anniversary. Elena opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside was a pair of diamond stud earrings. They were beautiful, objectively. But Elena didn't have pierced ears. She never had. Adrian knew this, or at least the Adrian of 5 years ago knew this. I can't wear these, Adrian, she said softly. Why not? They're 5 carats. My ears aren't pierced. Because of the clotting disorder, the doctor said I can't risk infection right now. Adrian rolled his eyes, a gesture of pure exhaustion. God, everything is a production with you. Give them to Mrs. Higgins, then. I'm going to shower. Sleep in the guest room tonight, Elena. Your coughing kept me up last night, and I have a meeting with Julian Thorne tomorrow. I need to be sharp. He walked out, leaving her alone with the diamonds and the cold food. As he passed her, the scent of vanilla hit her again, stronger this time. It wasn't a perfume she owned. Elena closed the velvet box. A single tear escaped, hot and stinging against her cold cheek. She realized then that the earrings weren't a mistake. They were a regift, a careless afterthought purchased for someone else, or perhaps rejected by someone else. The next morning, the sun shone brightly over the city, but the atmosphere inside the Vance penthouse remained grey. Adrian had left before Elena woke up. She sat in the kitchen, staring at her schedule of medications. A blue pill for the pain, a white one for the inflammation, a monthly injection due today at the clinic. She picked up her phone. She needed a ride to the clinic. Usually the driver took her, but Adrian had texted earlier. Took the driver. Take an Uber. Elena sighed and opened her banking app to transfer some funds for the ride and the copay. Her breath hitched. The screen flashed red. Access denied. She tried again. Account frozen. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in her chest. She dialed Adrian. It went straight to voicemail. She dialed his assistant, Jessica. Vance Global, Jessica speaking. Jessica, it's Elena. My card isn't working. I need to get to the clinic. There was an awkward pause on the line. Oh, Mrs. Vance. Mr. Vance gave instructions this morning to restructure the personal accounts. He said spending was getting out of hand and he needed to approve all transactions personally. He cut me off, Elena asked, her voice trembling. Jessica, I need my medication. It costs $4,000 a dose. I can't authorize that, Ma'am. Mr. Vance is in a lunch meeting at Le Jardin. Maybe you can go there and ask him. Le Jardin, the most exclusive French restaurant in the city. It was across town. Elena felt a wave of dizziness. She checked her purse. She had $40 in cash, enough for a cab to the restaurant, but not enough to get back. Thank you, Jessica, she whispered, and hung up. She dressed in the most professional outfit she could manage, a cream suit that used to fit perfectly, but now required a belt to stay up. She applied blush to hide the pallor of her skin. She wouldn't go to him as a beggar. She would go as his wife. The cab ride was nauseating. When Eleanor arrived at Le Jardin, the maître d', a man named Henri, who had known the Vances for years, looked at her with pity. "Mrs. Vance," Henri said, blocking her path slightly. Perhaps this isn't a good time." "I need to speak to my husband, Henri. It's a medical emergency. He is dining in a private booth." Elena pushed past him. Her desperation gave her a momentary burst of adrenaline. She walked through the plush, carpeted dining room, scanning the booths. She found him in the corner, near the patio windows. Adrian was laughing. His head was thrown back, his smile wide and genuine, a smile Eleanor hadn't seen in 2 years. Sitting across from him was a woman. She was everything Eleanor currently was not. Chloe Sinclair. Eleanor knew her. Chloe was the new VP of marketing at Vance Global. 26 years old, glowing skin, vibrant red lipstick, and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes. She was wearing a sleeveless dress that showed off her tanned, healthy arms. And on her ears, Elena froze. The diamond studs, the ones Adrian had tossed on the table last night. Chloe was wearing them. Adrian reached across the table and took Chloe's hand. "You're the only one who understands the vision, Chloe. Elena, she's stuck in the past. She's dead weight." "Don't say that, Adrian," Chloe purred, though her eyes danced with triumph. "She's sick. It's sad. It's not just sickness. She's given up. I need someone who can run at my pace. Someone like you." Elena felt the world tilt. The sounds of the restaurant, clinking silverware, low chatter, blurred into a high-pitched ring in her ears. She gripped the back of a nearby chair to steady herself. "Adrian," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper, but in the sudden silence of the booth, it sounded like a scream. Adrian's head snapped up. His face went from joy to shock, and then instantly to cold fury. He snatched his hand away from Chloe's, but the damage was done. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, standing up. "I told you I was in a meeting." "Is this the meeting?" Elena gestured to Chloe, then pointed a shaking finger at the earrings. "With my anniversary gift?" Chloe touched her earlobe, feigning innocence. "Oh, these?" Adrian said they were just a thank you for the quarterly report. "Go home, Elena," Adrian growled, stepping out of the booth to block her from the other diner's view. "You're making a scene. You look like a ghost." "You froze my accounts, Adrian. I can't get my treatment. We'll discuss finances at home, not here." "I need the medicine now. I missed my appointment," Elena cried out. Adrian grabbed her arm. His grip was too tight. "I said go home. Stop acting like a charity case. I'll transfer the money tonight. Now get out before you embarrass me further." He shoved her. It wasn't a violent throw, but in her weakened state, it was enough. Elena stumbled back. Her heel caught on the carpet. She fell. It wasn't a graceful fall. She hit the floor hard, her hip slamming against the wood. A gasp went through the restaurant. "Oh my God," Chloe said, not moving to help. "She really is unstable." Elena looked up from the floor. She waited for Adrian to offer a hand. She waited for the husband who had vowed to protect her to help her up. Adrian stood over her, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked down with pure disgust. "Get up, Elena," he whispered harshly. "You are pathetic." Elena didn't remember leaving the restaurant. She remembered Henri, the maître d', helping her up with tears in his eyes. She remembered walking out the front door into the sudden downpour of rain. She had no money for a cab back. The $40 had been spent getting here. She walked. The rain soaked through her cream suit instantly, plastering the expensive fabric to her shivering skin. She walked aimlessly. the image of Chloe wearing those diamonds burning in her mind. Dead weight. That's what he called her. Her body began to shut down. The stress, combined with the mist injection, was triggering a crisis. Her joints locked up. Her vision began to tunnel. She was crossing a busy intersection near the financial district when her legs simply refused to move another step. I'm going to die here, she thought. And Adrian won't even care. He'll just be relieved he doesn't have to file the divorce papers. The traffic light turned green. A black SUV screeched to a halt inches from her legs. A horn blared. Elena swayed. The world went black, and she crumpled onto the wet asphalt. Inside the black SUV, Julian Thorne looked up from his tablet. What happened? Why did we stop? Someone collapsed in the road, sir, his driver said. Looks like a junkie. Julian frowned. He was a man of precision, the CEO of Thorne Enterprises, and Adrian Vance's fiercest rival. He didn't have time for delays. But something about the figure on the ground, the cream suit, the way the dark hair fanned out against the pavement. Wait, Julian said. He opened the door and stepped out into the rain, ignoring his driver's protests. He walked toward the crumpled figure. He knelt down and brushed the wet hair away from the woman's face. His breath caught in his throat. Elena? He hadn't seen her in 3 years. Not since the charity gala where she had outsmarted him on a real estate deal. Back then, she was vibrant, sharp, a force of nature. The woman lying in the mud was a shadow. Her cheekbones were protruding, her skin translucent. She groaned, her eyes fluttering open. She looked at him, but he doubted she recognized him. Adrian, she whispered, delirious. Please. Julian's jaw tightened. He knew the rumors. Everyone in the business world knew Adrian was stepping out with his marketing VP. Everyone knew Adrian was neglecting his wife. But seeing the reality of it, seeing Elena Vance left to die in the street like a stray dog, ignited a fury in Julian that he hadn't felt in decades. He scooped her up in his arms. She felt terrifyingly light, like a bird made of hollow bones. Driver, Julian roared, carrying her toward the car. Call Dr. Aris. Tell him to meet us at my private clinic. Now. But sir, the meeting with the Japanese investors. Cancel it, Julian snapped, sliding into the back seat with Eleanor cradled against his chest. He pulled off his heavy wool coat and wrapped it around her shivering body. Eleanor's head lulled against his shoulder. She was freezing cold. You're safe, Julian whispered into her hair, his voice surprisingly gentle. I've got you. He looked out the window at the rainy skyline of the city Adrian Vance thought he owned. Julian pulled out his phone and sent a text to his head of security. Find out everything about Adrian Vance's finances, and find out exactly what he's been doing while his wife was dying. I want to bury him. As the car sped away, Elena fell into a deep unconsciousness, leaving her old life on the wet pavement behind her. The first thing Elena felt was warmth. It wasn't the stifling, dry heat of the Vance estate's central heating, but a gentle, enveloping warmth, like sunlight trapped in a blanket. She blinked her eyes open. The ceiling above her was high and painted with a soft fresco of clouds, nothing like the stark white minimalism Adrian preferred. The steady, rhythmic beep, beep, beep of a heart monitor told her she wasn't in heaven, but she wasn't in a standard hospital room either. She's awake. A deep voice rumbled from the corner of the room. Elena turned her head. Sitting in a leather armchair, reading a file with reading glasses perched on his nose, was Julian Thorne. Panic spiked in her chest. She tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pushed her back down. A doctor she didn't recognize was standing by the bed. Easy, Mrs. Vance, the doctor said. I'm Dr. Aris. You've been unconscious for 3 days. Your platelet count was critically low. You were in septic shock. 3 days? Elena looked at Julian. Why am I here? Julian closed the file and took off his glasses. He looked tired, his shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that looked like they actually did manual labor, unlike Adrian's manicured limbs. Because the hospital had a mandatory reporting policy for neglect, Julian said calmly, though his eyes were flinty. And I didn't think you wanted the police knocking on Adrian's door just yet. So, I brought you to my private wing. Adrian. Elena's voice cracked. Does he know? Julian stood up and walked to the bedside. He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. I debated showing you this. Dr. Harris said it might cause stress. But I think you deserve the truth more than you deserve protection. He handed her the phone. It was a screenshot of Chloe Sinclair's Instagram story from yesterday. It showed Adrian and Chloe on a yacht, holding champagne flutes. The caption read, "Celebrating the big merger. Hard work pays off." Power couple. Vance Global. He hasn't called the police, Elena, Julian said softly. He hasn't called the hospitals. As far as I can tell, he told his staff you went to visit your sister in Vermont. I don't have a sister, Elena whispered, the phone shaking in her hand. I know. The realization hit her harder than the car could have. Adrian hadn't just ignored her. He had erased her. To him, her absence wasn't a tragedy. It was a convenience. He probably thought she was sulking in a hotel room somewhere. He didn't care enough to check. The tears didn't come. Instead, a cold, hard stone formed in the pit of her stomach. It was the death of hope, and strangely, it was liberating. Why are you helping me, Julian? She asked, her voice gaining a fraction of strength. You hate Adrian. You've been trying to buy him out for a decade. I do hate him, Julian admitted, a dark smirk playing on his lips. But I have never hated you. In fact, I've admired you. 5 years ago, the Valkyrie deal, the one where Vance Global acquired those shipping lanes in the Pacific? Yes, Elena nodded. I negotiated that. I know. Adrian took the credit, but I read the contract language. It had your syntax. It was brilliant. Adrian is a hammer. You were the scalpel. Seeing a scalpel left to rust in the rain offends me. Julian leaned in, his gaze intense. I didn't save you because you're a damsel in distress, Elena. I saved you because you are the smartest person Adrian Vance ever had, and he was too stupid to keep you alive. Get better. And then, let's make him regret the day he was born. For the next week, the dynamic in the Thorne estate was unlike anything Eleanor had ever known. At home, she was a burden. Here, she was a guest of honor. Julian's staff treated her with reverence. Dr. Aris visited 3 times a day, administering a new experimental treatment for her autoimmune condition. Treatment Adrian had claimed was too expensive and unproven, but which Julian paid for without blinking. But the most shocking thing was Julian himself. He didn't treat her like a porcelain doll. He treated her like a partner. In the evenings, he would bring his laptop to her room. Look at this, he'd say, showing her a spreadsheet of a failing subsidiary. Adrian is trying to offload this to Shell Corp. What am I missing? Elena, propped up on pillows, would squint at the numbers. He's hiding the debt in the pension fund. Look at line 45. If you buy that, you inherit the liability. Julian would grin, a genuine, boyish grin that made him look 10 years younger. I knew it. You're a genius, Elena. It was a seduction, but not of the body. It was a seduction of the mind. Julian was feeding her confidence, nurturing the part of her that Adrian had starved, her intellect. One rainy afternoon, 2 weeks after the incident, Elena was sitting in the conservatory, watching the rain hit the glass. She was walking now, though slowly. She wore a silk robe Julian had bought for her. Midnight blue, not the beige Adrian always insisted on. Julian walked in. He looked grim. "It's done," he said. "What is?" "I had my legal team serve the papers. Not divorce papers. Adrian would fight those just to be petty. I served him with a lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty regarding your joint assets. It froze his personal accounts, just like he froze yours." Elena turned to look at him. "He's going to come for me." "Let him," Julian said. "But he won't come here. He thinks you're at a battered women's shelter. My lawyers leaked that misinformation. It makes him look bad, so he's avoiding the press. He's trapped, Elena. He can't admit you're missing without admitting he didn't look for you." "I need to see him," Elena said suddenly. Julian frowned. "Why?" "Because," Elena stood up, her legs stronger than they had been in months. "I need him to see that I'm not dead, and I need to sign the divorce papers myself. I want to look him in the eye when I take half his empire." Julian studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "The annual tech gala is in 3 months, Julian said. "Adrian will be there to announce his merger with Oakhaven. It's the biggest night of his life." 3 months, Elena repeated. She looked at her reflection in the glass door. She was still thin, but the color was returning to her cheeks. The fire was back in her eyes. "That gives me 90 days to become someone he doesn't recognize." 3 months is a long time in the world of business, and an eternity in the world of healing. Elena didn't just recover, she evolved. Under Dr. Aris's care, the new treatments worked miracles. Her platelet count stabilized. Her energy returned. She started yoga, then Pilates, then boxing. She needed to hit something. Julian gave her full access to his resources. She cut her hair. The long, heavy locks Adrian loved were chopped into a sharp, chic bob that framed her jawline. She dyed it a rich, dark chocolate. She threw away the beige and cream wardrobe Adrian preferred and filled her closet with crimson, emerald, and black. But the biggest change happened in the war room of Thorn Enterprises. Elena officially joined Julian as a silent consultant. She pored over Vance Global's public filings. She found the cracks in the foundation. "Adrian is over-leveraged," Elena told Julian one night over dinner. They were eating in the kitchen, a domestic intimacy that had become natural between them. He borrowed against the Asian manufacturing plants to fund the Oakhaven merger. If the Oakhaven deal is delayed by even 48 hours, the loans get called in. He'll be insolvent. Julian swirled his wine. "And how do we delay the deal?" Elena smiled. It was a smile that would have terrified Adrian. "The environmental impact report for Oakhaven. It expires on the 15th. The gala is on the 16th. Adrian fired the compliance officer who tracked those dates because he talked too much. Adrian doesn't know the permit is expiring." "So," Julian leaned back, admiration glowing in his eyes. "We just let it expire." "We let him announce the merger on stage," Elena corrected. "And then, right after the applause dies down, you announce that you've bought the debt from the bank that holds the Asian plants." Julian laughed softly. "You are ruthless, Elena." "I learned from the worst," she replied. As the gala approached, the tension in the city was palpable. Rumors were swirling about Adrian Vance. His perfect relationship with Chloe was showing cracks. Without Elena to manage his life, Adrian looked disheveled in paparazzi photos. Chloe was bored by the boardroom and spent his money faster than he could make it. The night of the gala arrived. It was held at the Metropolitan Opera House. The red carpet was swarming with reporters. Adrian Vance arrived in a limousine. He stepped out, forcing a smile. He looked thinner, his eyes darting around nervously. Chloe hung on his arm, wearing a dress that was too loud and too revealing for a corporate event. She was checking her reflection in her phone, ignoring the press questions. "Mr. Vance! Mr. Vance! Where is your wife?" a reporter shouted. "Elena is still recovering in the countryside," Adrian lied smoothly, though sweat beaded on his forehead. "She sends her love." Inside the ballroom, the elite of the business world gathered. Adrian worked the room, but he was sweating. He needed this merger to close tonight. Suddenly, the room went quiet. The heavy double doors at the top of the grand staircase swung open. Julian Thorne stepped in. He looked impeccable in a tuxedo, radiating power and calm. But no one was looking at Julian. They were looking at the woman on his arm. She wore a gown of liquid gold that clung to every curve of her healthy, strong body. Her back was bare, her skin glowing. Her dark hair was sharp, her lips painted a deep blood red. She wore no jewelry except for a pair of vintage emerald earrings that matched her eyes. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a queen. Adrian froze mid-sentence. He dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor, but he didn't hear it. "Who is that?" Chloe asked, squinting. "Is that a model?" Adrian felt the blood drain from his face. "No," he whispered, his voice trembling with a mixture of horror and sudden, agonizing desire. "That's my wife." Elena and Julian began to descend the stairs. Every eye was on them. Elena locked eyes with Adrian across the room. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of the executioner greeting the condemned. Julian leaned down and whispered in her ear, loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "Ready to take back what's yours?" "I don't want it back, Julian," Elena replied, her voice smooth and confident. "I want to burn it down." They reached the bottom of the stairs. The crowd parted, creating a path directly to Adrian. Adrian took a step forward, his mind reeling. "Elena, you look alive?" Elena finished for him. She stopped 2 feet away from him. The scent of her expensive perfume, sandalwood and jasmine, Julian's favorite, wafted over him, replacing the cloying smell of vanilla he used to like. "You're supposed to be in Vermont," Adrian stammered. "And you're supposed to be a faithful husband," Elena said, her voice carrying through the silent room. We both seemed to be full of surprises. "Elena, baby." Adrian tried to touch her arm, his charm reflex kicking in. "We need to talk. You look incredible. Let's go home." Chloe stepped forward, looking insecure and angry. "Excuse me? Who do you think you are?" Elena turned her gaze to Chloe. She looked at the mistress with not anger, but pity. "I'm the woman who built the throne you're trying to sit on," Elena said calmly. "And I'm the woman who is about to kick the legs out from under it." She turned back to Adrian. "Enjoy your speech, Adrian. I'll be listening very closely." She took Julian's arm, and they walked past him, leaving Adrian Vance standing in the shattered glass of his own champagne, while the whispers of the crowd turned into a roar. The ballroom was buzzing with whispers, a hive of bees disturbed by a sudden storm. Adrian Vance wiped his clammy hands on his tuxedo trousers. He needed to regain control of the narrative. He was the CEO. This was his night. He marched to the podium, tapping the microphone. The feedback screech silenced the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adrian's voice boomed, though it lacked its usual steady cadence. "Thank you for the dramatic entrance. It seems my wife has made a miraculous recovery. But tonight is about the future. Tonight, I am proud to announce the merger between Vance Global and Oak Haven Tech. creating the largest logistics conglomerate in the hemisphere. Scattered applause. Most people were looking at Julian Thorne, who was calmly sipping a fresh glass of champagne in the front row, with Eleanor seated like a statue beside him. This merger, Adrian continued, talking faster, is secured by our manufacturing assets in Southeast Asia. It is a deal worth $4 billion. Actually, it's worth 0. A voice cut through the air. It wasn't Julian. It was Eleanor. She didn't shout. She simply spoke into the silence, and her voice carried with crystal clarity. She stood up, the gold dress shimmering under the stage lights. "Eleanor, sit down," Adrian hissed, covering the mic. "We'll talk about this later." "No, Adrian, we'll talk about it now." Elena walked toward the stage. She didn't take the stairs. She stood at the base of the platform, looking up at him. "You mentioned the manufacturing assets in Southeast Asia. The ones in Vietnam and Thailand?" "Yes, of course," Adrian laughed nervously, addressing the crowd. "My wife, always the micromanager." "Those assets were collateral for the loans you took out to pay for this venue, your new yacht, and—" Elena glanced at Chloe, who was shrinking into her chair. "Marketing expenses." "So what?" Adrian snapped, losing his cool. "The loans are in good standing." "They were," Elena corrected, "until this morning. You see, the environmental permits for those factories expired yesterday at midnight. You fired the compliance officer, so no one renewed them. That put the factories in violation of international law, which triggered a default clause in your loan agreement." The room went deadly silent. The investors in the room knew exactly what that meant. "The bank put the debt up for auction this morning at 9 a.m., Elena continued, her eyes locking onto his. "And by 9:05 a.m. it was purchased." Adrian gripped the podium. His knuckles were white. "Purchased? By who?" Julian Thorne stood up. He buttoned his jacket slowly, a predator rising from the grass. "By Thorne Enterprises," Julian said, his voice deep and amused. "Which means, Adrian, I now own your factories. And since you defaulted, I'm calling in the debt. Immediately." You can't," Adrian stammered. He looked at the Oakhaven CEO, Mr. Sterling, who was sitting at a VIP table. "Sterling, tell them. The deal is signed." Mr. Sterling stood up, looking furious. "The deal was contingent on those factories being operational, Vance. If you don't own them, you have nothing to sell me. The deal is off." "No!" Adrian screamed, the veneer of the sophisticated CEO shattering completely. "I have the patents. I have the fleet." "Actually," Elena interrupted again, "the patents were registered under the Vance Family Trust. My trust. You transferred them there 3 years ago for tax purposes. Remember? You said I was too stupid to touch them, so they'd be safe." She smiled, a cold, terrifying expression. "I've revoked your license to use them, effective immediately." The crowd gasped. In the span of 3 minutes, Adrian Vance had gone from a billionaire to a man with no assets, massive debt, and no product. Adrian looked around the room. He saw the pity in the eyes of his peers. He saw the flashing cameras capturing his ruin. He looked for Chloe. "Chloe," he shouted, "tell them. We have the marketing strategy." He pointed to the table where Chloe had been sitting. The chair was empty. Chloe Sinclair was already near the exit, her phone pressed to her ear. As she passed a reporter, Adrian heard her say, "I barely know him. I was just an employee. I'm resigning effective immediately. Please, no photos." She didn't even look back. Adrian slumped against the podium. The microphone gave a high-pitched whine, mirroring the ringing in his ears. He looked down at Eleanor. "Why?" he whispered, his voice broken. "I'm your husband." Elena walked up the stairs, her heels clicking on the stage. She stopped inches from him. She reached out and took the microphone from his trembling hand. "You were my husband when I was dying on the bathroom floor," she said into the mic, broadcasting her words to the world. "You were my husband when you stepped over me to go to dinner with your mistress. You were my husband when you froze my bank accounts to save money for your yacht." She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper only he could hear. "Now, you're just a trespasser in my building. Get out." The morning after the gala, the sun rose over the city skyline, casting long, golden shadows against the glass towers of the financial district. But inside the headquarters of Vance Global, the mood was apocalyptic. Adrian Vance had not slept. He had spent the night in a hotel room, not his usual suite at the Ritz-Carlton, but a mid-tier airport hotel near the highway, the only place that would accept a credit card that hadn't yet been flagged by the fraud department. At 8 a.m. sharp, he stood in the lobby of his own building. He swiped his access card at the turnstile. Beep, beep, beep. A red light flashed. Access denied. There must be a mistake, Adrian snapped at the security guard, a man named Miller, whom Adrian had ignored every morning for 10 years. "Miller, let me in. The system is glitching." Miller didn't move to open the gate. He looked down at a clipboard, his expression unreadable. "No mistake, Mr. Vance. I have a directive from the board of directors. You've been suspended pending an internal audit. You are not permitted on the premises." "Suspended?" Adrian's voice rose an octave, cracking. "I am the CEO. I built this building. You can't keep me out." "Actually, they can." Adrian spun around. Standing behind him were two men in dark suits, holding briefcases, flanked by a uniformed police officer. He recognized one of them, Marcus Thorne, the lead counsel for Julian Thorne's acquisition team. "Mr. Vance," Marcus said, his voice smooth and professional, the kind of voice that delivered ruin with a smile. "As of 9 a.m. this morning, Thorne Enterprises has executed the lien on the Vance Global subsidiaries. Since those subsidiaries hold the lease on this headquarters, we are technically your landlords now. And you are trespassing." "This is illegal," Adrian hissed, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the air conditioning. "I'll sue you. I'll sue Julian. I'll burn this place to the ground." "You're welcome to try," Marcus replied, handing him a thick envelope. "But I suggest you save your legal fees for your defense. The Securities and Exchange Commission has opened an investigation into your transfer of patents to the family trust. Tax fraud is a serious allegation, Adrian." The police officer stepped forward. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the property, or I will be forced to escort you out in handcuffs." Adrian looked around the lobby. Employees were streaming in, people he had hired, people he had screamed at, people he had underpaid. They stopped to watch. Some pulled out their phones to record. There was no pity in their eyes, only a morbid curiosity. Humiliated, Adrian snatched the envelope and stormed out the revolving doors. As he hit the sidewalk, a paparazzi flash blinded him. They were waiting. The headline on the newsstand kiosk screamed in bold black letters, "Vance vanquished, the billion-dollar bluff." The collapse was not a slow slide. It was a freefall. By noon, the bank had foreclosed on the penthouse. The mortgage payments had been tied to the company's stock performance, a risky clause Adrian had signed in arrogance, believing the stock would only ever go up. When the share price hit $2.40 a share, the trigger was pulled. Adrian rushed to the apartment to salvage what he could. He found the locks already changed. A notice from the city marshal was taped to the mahogany door. He banged on the door until his fists bruised. "Open up! My watches are in there! My safe!" The door opened, but it wasn't a marshal. It was Mrs. Higgins, the housekeeper he had forced Elena to fire months ago because she cost too much. "Mrs. Higgins?" Adrian breathed, relieved. "Thank God, let me in. I need to get the safe." Mrs. Higgins stood in the doorway, blocking his path. She wore a visitor's badge. "I'm afraid I can't do that, Mr. Vance. I'm here assisting the auditors with the inventory. Everything inside is considered a seized asset." "But my clothes, my passport." "The auditors have packed a box of personal essentials for you," she said, pointing to a cardboard box sitting in the hallway. "Toothbrush, 2 suits, some underwear. The rest, the Rolexes, the artwork, the electronics. Stay." Adrian looked at the woman who had served his family for years. "Mrs. Higgins, please. I have nowhere to go. Let me just grab the cash from the safe. I know the code." Mrs. Higgins looked at him, her eyes sad but firm. "Mrs. Vance called me this morning. She offered me a job managing the estate she plans to buy. She asked how you were." "She did?" Adrian felt a spark of hope. Is she worried about me?" "No," Mrs. Higgins said coldly. "She wanted to make sure I locked the service entrance so you couldn't sneak in." She closed the door in his face. The click of the deadbolt echoed like a gunshot. 3 days later, the reality of his new life had set in. Adrian was staying in a motel in Queens, the kind of place where the neon sign buzzed all night, and the sirens never stopped. He had sold his cufflinks to a pawn shop for $400 just to pay for the room and some takeout. He sat on the lumpy mattress, staring at his phone. He had called Chloe Sinclair 47 times. On the 48th attempt, the line connected. "Chloe!" Adrian shouted, gripping the phone. "Chloe, baby, where are you? I've been going out of my mind. We need to leave the city. I have an offshore account in the Caymans. I just need to figure out the password." "Adrian, stop!" Chloe's voice was icy. There was background noise, laughter, music, the clink of silverware. "Where are you?" "I'm in Cabo," she said. "With friends." "Cabo? We were supposed to go there for your birthday next week." "Yeah, well, plans change. Look, Adrian, my lawyer advised me not to speak to you. You're being investigated for fraud. I can't have that attached to my brand." "Your brand?" Adrian laughed, a manic, hysterical sound. "I bought you that brand. I paid for your apartment. I put you on the cover of Forbes. And now you're a liability," she cut him off. "Oh, and by the way, the earrings, the diamond studs you gave me, I had them appraised. They're lab-grown, cheap, just like you." The line went dead. Adrian stared at the wall. The mold spot on the wallpaper looked like a laughing face. He felt a pain in his chest, a tight, crushing pressure. For the first time, he wasn't faking it. The stress was eating him alive. He realized then that he had no one. He had built a life on transactions, and now that his currency was gone, he was bankrupt in every sense of the word. There was only one person who had ever loved him when he was nothing. One person who had signed the prenup without reading it, because she trusted him. One person who had nursed him through the flu in their first tiny apartment. Elena. The iron gates of the Thorne estate were formidable, towering 12 feet high and topped with gold spikes. It was raining, a cold, biting sleet that heralded the coming winter. Adrian stood by the intercom. He had walked 3 miles from the bus stop because he couldn't afford a cab. His Italian leather shoes were soaked through. His suit was wrinkled, the collar stained. He looked nothing like the titan of industry he had been a week ago. "Please," he said into the speaker, "just 5 minutes. Tell her I'm dying." He waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. He was shivering violently, his teeth chattering. Just as he was about to turn away, the heavy gates groaned and swung open. Adrian's heart leapt. She still cared. She wouldn't let him freeze. He walked up the long gravel driveway. The house was glowing with warmth. Through the bay windows, he could see a fire roaring in the hearth. Elena was standing on the covered porch. She wasn't wearing a hospital gown or a robe. She was dressed in a thick, cream-colored cable-knit sweater and dark jeans, holding a mug of tea. Her hair was shiny, her skin rosy. She looked peaceful. Standing a few feet behind her, leaning against a stone pillar, was Julian Thorne. He didn't look aggressive. He looked like a man who was completely secure in his territory. Adrian stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. He looked up at her, water dripping from his nose. "Eleanor," he choked out. "You look terrible, Adrian," she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was factual. I lost everything," Adrian sobbed, falling to his knees on the wet gravel. It was a calculated move. He knew Elena had a soft heart. "The company, the house, the accounts. I'm sleeping in a motel. I have nothing to eat." Elena took a sip of her tea. "I remember when I couldn't eat because I couldn't afford the nausea medication. Do you remember that, Adrian? You told me to chew on ginger root." "I was stressed. I didn't mean it," Adrian pleaded. "I was trying to save the company for us, for our future." "No," Elena shook her head slowly. "You were saving it for yourself. You erased me, Adrian. You watched me fade away, and you turned up the volume on the TV so you wouldn't hear me coughing." "I can change." Adrian crawled up one step. "I see it now. You're the only one who matters. Chloe, she was nothing. A distraction. You're my wife. We swore an oath, in sickness and in health." Julian stepped forward then. He didn't raise his voice, but his presence was like a physical wall. "That oath is a two-way street, Vance. You broke it the minute you let another woman wear her diamonds." Adrian ignored him, focusing his desperate gaze on Eleanor. "Eleanor, please. I have a pain in my chest. I think it's my heart. I need a doctor. I need help. Don't leave me to die like this." Elena looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes. It was real. He was terrified. Not of losing her, but of being ordinary, of being poor, of being alone. She set her mug down on the railing and walked down the steps until she was standing right in front of him. She smelled of sandalwood and rain. "I won't leave you to die, Adrian," she said softly. Adrian let out a breath of relief. "Thank you." "Oh, thank you. I knew you still loved me." "I didn't say that," Elena corrected him. "I said I won't let you die, because death is an escape, and you have a long time to live with what you've done." She reached into her back pocket and pulled out a small, white business card. She tucked it into the breast pocket of his soaked suit jacket. "Dr. Aris runs a free clinic downtown on 4th Street, she said. "He treats the uninsured. He treats people who have been forgotten by the system. Go there. Stand in line. Wait your turn like everyone else. He'll check your heart." Adrian stared at her, the hope draining from his face, replaced by a dawning horror. You're not taking me back?" "The Elena you married is gone, Adrian. You killed her." She stepped back, ascending the stairs to where Julian waited. Julian wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her into his warmth. "Go now," Elena said, her voice final. "Before I call the police for trespassing. And Adrian?" He looked up, broken. "Try the ginger root. It really does help with the nausea." She turned around and walked back into the house. Julian followed, pausing only to give Adrian a look of utter dismissal before closing the heavy oak door. Adrian Vance was left alone in the dark. The warmth of the house was just a few feet away, but it might as well have been on the moon. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the card for the free clinic. Dr. Aris. Walk-ins. Welcome. A sob ripped through his throat. He stood up, his legs shaking, and turned back toward the gate. The long walk down the driveway felt like a funeral procession for the man he used to be. Inside the house, the silence was comfortable. Elena sat on the sofa, tucking her legs under her. Julian sat beside her, adding a log to the fire. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Elena watched the flames dance. She thought about the man in the rain. She felt a phantom ache in her chest, the ghost of the love she had carried for so long. But as she took a deep breath, her lungs filled with air, clear, pain-free air. "I felt sorry for him," she admitted. Julian tensed slightly. "But," she continued, turning to look at Julian, her eyes bright, "I felt more sorry for the woman I used to be. I spent 5 years trying to be enough for a man who was empty inside. I'm not doing that anymore." Julian smiled, reaching out to take her hand. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. "So, what now, Mrs. Vance? Or, should I say, Ms. Ross?" "Elena," she smiled. "Just Elena. And as for what's next?" She picked up a file from the coffee table. It was the acquisition plan for the new logistics division of Thorn Enterprises. "I think we need to restructure the Asian manufacturing division," she said, tapping the paper. "If we implement a fair wage policy and update the environmental protocols, we can increase efficiency by 15% within the first quarter." Julian laughed, leaning in to kiss her forehead. Music to my ears. Outside, the storm raged on, washing away the traces of Adrian Vance's footprints. But inside, amidst the blueprints and the firelight, Elena Ross was building something that no one could ever tear down again. Fate hadn't just reversed. It had finally set things right. And that is the story of how Elena Vance turned her pain into power. She taught Adrian the hardest lesson of all. Never mistreat the person who holds up your world, because when they leave, the sky falls on you. It's a brutal reminder that karma might be delayed, but it never misses an address. Adrian thought Elena was weak because she was kind, but he learned that the most dangerous creature on earth is a woman who has nothing left to lose. What about you? Have you ever stayed with someone who didn't appreciate you, hoping they would change? Or have you ever had a revenge glow-up, like Elena? Let me know your story in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice and romance, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. I post new dramas every week. Thanks for listening. And remember, know your worth, or someone else will set it for you. See you in the next video.